congregations. The budget that we're considering today is the FY fiscal year 2020 budget, which begins on July 1st, 2019, and ends June 30th, 2020. Budgets enable us to compare financial results from previous years with anticipated expenses and revenue in the year that we're budgeting for. So for 2020, again, beginning July 1st, that's what we're going to be really focusing on. Once passed, our budget is a working document for all of us, the members of the congregation, staff members and board members to use throughout the year. And the board measures actual expenses and revenues against the budgeted amounts every month at board meetings. And if anybody in this group who's not a member of the board would like to learn more, every month in the newsletter, you'll get a budget update. And so we're trying to give as much information as possible, as often as possible, about what's happening with our expenses, what's happening with our revenues. I want to go to the first slide, which is the budgeting process. A lot of people participate in this. As you can see on the left of the screen, the committee chairs for the program committees in the church submit budgets for each committee. The staff submits a budget, and staff works on the budget along with board members. First the executive team and then the finance committee, month to month to month, beginning in December, January, start looking at this and hammering out a budget that is then presented to the board. We passed the budget that you'll be looking at today in the board of directors, and today is the green box on the far right where the congregation looks at the budget and then asks questions about it and has an opportunity to propose changes to it also. In this process, a lot of people work very hard. I wanted to highlight the work of 3 staff members, although more are involved, but Vanessa, Syra, and our intern, Sherry, this year have been very much involved with this entire process. Sherry, I think, gives a new definition to what an intern does. I've never seen an intern attend more meetings of finance committees, stewardship committees, board meetings than Sherry has. So it's been a real credit to Vanessa's leadership as a mentor for Sherry, and also for Sherry as an intern. And I wanted to also highlight Syra's work on this, really putting a lot of time and effort into getting us clear and accurate numbers and information to work with this year. Moving on to the next slide, I want to talk about fiscal year 2019, which ends on June 30th of this year. And these are the projected numbers for the end of 2019 budget. And I wanted to explain a couple of the numbers on this sheet. One is we're looking at a budget shortfall that looks pretty daunting. It's a high number. I wanted to explain a couple of aspects of that. The main reason for the shortfall is some roof damage that then led to a series of calamities involving mold and removal of asbestos and repair of the original damage, which is around $70,000 of that emergency expenses line at the bottom. The total revenue negative number on the top right, the negative $10,376, is a number that reflects a decision by the board to give the Montessori school a break in rent, because it's the Montessori school that is dealing with this roof repair issue the most. They've been displaced from 2 classrooms for several months at this point, and the board decided that it would be fair to offer them a break in the rent, and that's what that number represents at the top. If you look at the line of total expenses, approximately $39,000 that we are over budget at this point. Looks like a high number, but it's actually percentage-wise pretty close to what we budgeted last year. And these are not final numbers for 2019. These will change. I wanted to point out that the $70,000 cost for the roof is something that we've just learned earlier this month, that the insurance company, in its first letter to us, is unwilling to cover. They're offering us nothing at this point for coverage. But I'm happy to say that that's only the first communication. We have not responded yet, and we'll be responding to the insurance company, pointing out why we think that they are that they have insured us for some of the things that they have not insured us for. They sent us a 43-page letter, 41 pages of which approximately, maybe 40 pages of which approximately, are diagrams and photographs. So we're actually looking for expertise and help from anybody who knows how to respond to an insurance company's denial of claim for an issue like the roof repair that needs to be done. So let me know if you know of anybody. Well, I mentioned this to somebody who was not able to attend today, but was here before the meeting, and he's already on the lookout for somebody. So we've got one possible referral soon. But please let me know if you know of anybody. The other emergency repairs were much smaller, luckily, than the roof, but elevator, fire alarms, and a plumbing issue. I think last year at this meeting we talked about there were more emergency repairs. I think the number was similar, but it was actually a lot of different repairs. When we talk about the 2020 budget, in a moment, one of the important things to recognize about the budget is the more we spend now to shore up our beautiful old building, the less we'll spend in emergency repairs in the future. And so part of what we need to think about is how best to invest in preventing big $70,000 bills from hitting us in the future. For fiscal year 2020, the annual operating fund drive this year was a huge success. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, Carrie.
One of the things that I think is so awesome about this slide, the previous slide, is that on revenue, other than the rent that we're giving to Montessori, we're on track. That means people paid their pledges. It means that people made donations. It means that our rentals were online with what we thought they would be this year, and that is really awesome. So that's something everybody struggles with, and you remember this time last year we were in front of you saying people made pledges and then didn't pay them. And so we were quite a bit underfunded, and this year people really stepped up, they paid their pledges, and not only that, they made, as Scott will get into, they made enormous sacrifices for next year as well. So thank you for everybody for doing that.
Thank you, Carrie. I wanted to invite anybody else, if you have questions about what's being presented, to please interrupt me too. Happy to try to answer questions or defer to others if I don't have the answer to. So the next slide, this next slide is about our annual operating fund drive, which was, as Carrie pointed out, a huge success this year. The Stewardship Committee worked really hard, I think communicated the value of the Unitarian Church to us members, and was able to get an increasing number of pledges. We're now at a point where we are, I believe we are, 44 pledging households have not pledged at this point, but we've got something like 206 households that have pledged. A year ago at this time, we were looking at 163 pledges total, so we're up a lot higher than we were last year at this time. So thank you so much. I don't think she's here, but Stephanie Gowan and her committee did an excellent job in stewardship, and the pledge drive led by Kelly Murray and Lawrence Pilgrim was excellent this year. The drive is over, but it's not too late to pledge, and we've got a little bit of a gap to fill. So it's a good time to get that in if you're among one of those 44 households that hasn't pledged yet. As of May 9th, the pledge drive total was $537,116, which if you're following along in the budget summary, the narrative, that's slightly higher. It's about $400 higher than the number that's in this narrative document. Syra just pulled that most recent number this morning. What we're hoping, because we've got a similar meeting next weekend, is that the number goes even higher between today and next Sunday. And I'll report on that if it does. So yeah, there it is. 204 household pledging units have made pledges for this year. Last year, 163. So we've got a little bit to go, 44 households, but we're almost there. And the balanced budget estimate for pledge revenue was $560,000. And so we've got about $23,000 remaining that we'd like to get to be commensurate with what we're planning for the budget for 2020. And so in our balanced budget, we've got some important bullet points. The first one being that rental revenue will be slightly down this year. As most of you know, the center will be closed for the summer while the bathrooms are being replaced. And we couldn't rent out the space without the bathrooms available. So I think we're going to lose at least 2 months of income and maybe a little bit more depending on how long it takes the work to be completed. The board was insistent this year that cost of living increases be provided for staff this year. Last year, the staff was not able to get cost of living increases because of the budget shortfalls. But this year we did as best as we could on that. And then the proposed investment earnings draw will remain the same in this 2020 budget. 100% green power is built into the budget. And on the mission vision process, the budget includes a $3,000 line item for yet to be identified initiatives. And the UUA fair share dues assessment was increased to $33,000 this year by the UUA. And our budget is proposing a $25,000 payment with the proviso that if we do get a lot more money that we could decide to increase that. Yeah, yes.
I was sort of surprised by how little money there is for the mission vision process, thinking that.
Hold on, because we've got people online too, if you could.
Thank you.
Say that.
$3,000 for the yet-to-be-identified initiatives springing from the mission vision process. It was my understanding, and it might just be me, the way I understand things, but vision mission is the most important thing ahead of us. This is what unifies us for the future. This is what makes us more than a congregation, but moves us closer to the ideals of a community. And it looks like it's being buried, so I have questions about that.
Thank you.
I'm on the task force, and we are not going to have a strategic plan that the congregation, ready for the congregational approval, probably to the end of the calendar year, close to the end of the calendar year. And a lot of the things that we're going to suggest, it seems to be, is going to be getting more information and doing internal processes and things that may not cost external money. Right now, we don't really know what we would do that would cost more money. If it turns out, like if some major thing turns out that would be a really good thing for the strategic plan, then we can always come back to the congregation or seek other sources. Like this year, the whole vision mission process was funded by Hinckley. And it's possible that Hinckley might step forward next year if there are identifiable issues that we need that are not in the budget. This year, Hinckley came forward like $33,000 in January. It's because the Hinckley board is made up entirely of church board members. And so it's a little incestuous, but we really do care if there's a sudden need for things that might be something that Hinckley would be willing to fund. Maybe.
Thank you, Galen. Thinking back to a year ago too, it's not on this slide, but I wanted to remind people that a year ago when we were facing a pretty significant shortfall, we were considering a 2-week furlough for staff as a way to help balance the budget. So I think we're in a much better place this year that we are actually offering cost of living increases in this budget, which again we can't think of those as raises because it's just keeping people at the level they are in this expensive city. But to be able to do that compared with the possibility last year of a 2-week furlough is a big change. Yeah, I think it's worth a round of applause. So thank you. The round of applause is really for the folks who've come through with increasing their pledges and getting their pledges in and their pledges made for fiscal year 2020. Looking ahead, this is a non-voting meeting, as I mentioned earlier. We'll have the same thing next week on the 19th. And for folks who are on the live stream, if you want to submit questions, you can between now and then. And I wanted to let the members of the congregation know that the deadline for proposing amendments to this budget, the deadline is May 27th at noon. Everything seems to be happening on a holiday, whether it's a San Francisco holiday like Beta Breakers, Mother's Day, or May 27th, which is a Monday holiday. And then we'll be having the congregational vote on the budget on June 2nd, and then a week after that, the annual meeting, which will be, I hope, to celebrate the passage of the budget the week before. For information on amendments, again, the deadline being May 27th, you can send a message to Judy Payne, Secretary of the Church, at this address on the screen. And I wanted to point out, too, that to keep the meeting as moving along as well as possible, there will be no amendments accepted on the floor, so everything needs to be done in advance. And finally, thank you very much, and happy Mother's Day, everybody. Yes, Carrie.
Are there questions that we can help you answer? Now's an opportunity for you to ask questions. Scott's here, Sarah's here. We've got other experts in the room that can help elucidate what we have in the spreadsheet. You'll notice really there aren't a lot of changes between what we budgeted in 1819 versus what we're proposing in 1920, other than increases and so forth, and a few new things like the vision putting money aside. It's really just trying to support the programs that we have in place right now. So are there any questions? Yes, Don.
Thank you. For me, the outstanding change is, if I get the figures approximately right, $527,000 raised versus $292. That is normally I don't see changes like that anywhere. So can you expand on how that was possible, and if we can find a way of whatever that caused to happen, that it be continued so we don't go back to the 292 and think of this just as a fortunate, exceptional year.
The 292 was where we were in pledges at this time last year. So we knew that there were outstanding pledges still to come in, and we had anticipated, I think, in the 500,000 arena, and that actually did happen this year. I think, I don't have the figures in front of me broken down, but it was over 500,000 that we ended up with in pledges this year. So, but the wonderful thing is, this year, the wonderful thing is everybody paid their pledges, which is great, and that this year they made pledging for next year earlier, so that we're much better able to anticipate what we can do than building a budget based on sort of wishes and dreams as we did last year, because we didn't really have all the money in hand.
What I was wondering about, was there any difference in the skills of the stewardship committee? Were they more professional? Did they have more ways of persuading? And that kind of thing, if we can continue that.
I think, Yeah, thumb screws were good, yeah. I think with the work that Vanessa started last year with really being open with people about here we are with our money, and the changes that we could make really helped a lot. And I'm going to turn it over to Galen.
One of the things that is different about this year now is that last year people were still paying their capital campaign pledge. So and there was a lot of confusion in people's minds. They say, well, I'm already giving you this much money, and they didn't remember that it was for the building and not for the operating expenses. And then what we tried to do this time last year is say, wait a second, there's two different funds. And then people went, oh, and we're very generous and said, here, have some more of my money. But it was the fact that we were running a capital campaign at the same time, and we hadn't clearly communicated that so much.
And Sarah?
And I just want to give a shout out, I think, to Donald's question. There was a lot of people hours that were put in this year that even last year they were put in, but just more. And so it was really due to the great hard work of the Annual Operating Fund committee members that identified a pattern of communications with the members. They reached out, they reached back out, and they really did a great job of just improving upon the years and years of stewardship to make this year clearer for folks. And I think the capital campaign, which people are still paying off, so let's not write that off just yet. But I think it really was due to the great planning that went into it. And I think a lot of that was the early discussion of what we are going to try to budget for. But then really just going back at it and just really communicating with people and checking the numbers and checking who's pledged and who hasn't. And I just want to give a really big shout out to Kelly and Lawrence for their work and their whole team.
Any other questions?
Hurrah about the fine work of the board and everybody else to make this year better than before. And that's my whole point. I always tell people, do better than yesterday or the before. And, that pays your future. So that's what we're doing for the church. So I appreciate that. It's great work. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Vanessa, did you have anything you wanted to say? Are you?
I mean, I just think we can't say enough that everybody's been doing whatever they can. And, for some people that meant they had to make cuts this year. And for other people that meant enormous increases that blew you off. And I knew in church work that I would be better because of the people I would be in church with. And it's so true in every place in our lives that we invite each other to be better and then step up when others invite us to be better. And so, we all did what we could, and we managed, an 11%, I think, increase on average or something. That was what Lawrence keeps saying, so I'm believing Lawrence since he has lots of spreadsheets. And I would say that we are also, to Don's question, doing a much better job in the annual giving of handing down what was done before. So Carrie had a whole bunch of stuff she had done years before that she put together in a computer format, thumb drive, that she gave to Marty, who had to do the annual operating fund in like 3 hours. He had to put it together and then launch it because we were behind. And then he added his improvements and handed that on to Kelly and Lawrence. It's a great model for what we should be thinking about in all of our leadership in church, right? Like, Thad and the auction, right? Like, what are the things that we know how to do? What are the documents you need to have? Because occasionally we wind up and find out that someone 10 years ago figured out how to do something really well, and then we just lost everything they did. I don't know where it went. Maybe we'll find it in the archives when we clean them out one day, but this has been an example of people really building on the best of the people who went before them, so it's great.
Thank you, Vanessa. Any other questions to ask of Scott, Vanessa, myself, Syra, while we're here in the room? And Sherry, I think you missed Scott's thank you to you for all the hard work that you've done here in church and how many meetings you've attended. So, see, you'll have to see it online. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. And if you didn't get enough today, there's another meeting just like this in a week.
since it's almost over.
Yeah, I'm actually glad I get to do